fast forward to 2002, and you released the fantastic self-titled album, the first album with the all-star lineup, the first album with Chris and Dave on it. This was a top-notch album and still is, in my opinion. So many great songs.
It's probably my
production.
favorite.
It's the best Squad 50. Yeah, it's the best Squad 50 album ever.
Yeah, great
Until
mixture
this next one.
A great mixture of punk and rock and roll. So John, yeah, you once told me that, you know, the self-titled album was Squad in its prime.
It is the prime. It was the first album that those, like the five of us, Dave, Adam, Chris, me, and Jeff had made all together. And it was great. It was young. It was inspired. The first day we were supposed to start tracking was 9/11. And obviously we did not start tracking that day. So it put like a whole different spin on like everything that we had kind of prepared for. When we're in Little Rock, Arkansas, in a La Quinta Inn on the second story, Dave gets a call from his girlfriend and says, turn on the TV, and turn on the TV. First plane had already hit. By that time, we made it down to the lobby, and everyone's pretty much gathered in there. And we all see the second plane hit, and it just became like, what's going on? And like, eventually, Barry Pointer came over, and it's like, well, it's been a day, and I'm going to just take tonight, because we were supposed to start tracking that day. And he's like, we're not going to track. And it's like, I'm just going to spend some time with my family. And like, yeah, we totally understand. And then we're just like this band that's in the middle of, you know, Arkansas, just sitting there. And I mean, but at that time we even felt like a family, because we had spent so much time like writing different songs. Dave was my roommate by then, and you know, spent a lot of time with him. And so, I mean, it's just a weird time, especially. And then like, first thing I thought is like, oh, you know, the Bombs album cover is going to come into question. And then of course it started coming into question. That was even before social media. And then, so it's just really weird. Like, we're trying to create this new thing, and then the old thing is being brought up because of, you know, a terrible thing that happened. So
right.
It was a very weird time, but I think it kind of like brought us all together. Like, I think it did, like most of America, you know, just like focused us on like what we were doing, even if it was trivial, making a record.
Well, you mentioned Barry Pointer, who was the producer for that album.
Greatest,
you know,
one of the greatest dudes ever.
Yeah, so I mean, up to that time, you know, he had mostly produced hardcore and metal albums. I think he had done the Juliana Theory and Calibretto also. But you know, was self-titled a you know, a unique project for him? What was it like working with him?
It was awesome, man.
It was
his studio was in like a
garage.
Garage out behind his house, and he had his, you know, just really cool little home studio. And I think that's the first time we ever played to a click track. Like, I think Dave was actually even a little nervous about, like, I don't know, I've never played to a click track. I don't know if I can play to a click track. But Dave's like one of the best drummers in the world. So, I mean, he had no trouble doing it. But it was so much fun. And he was in like a really cool area of Little Rock. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. But it was like sort of just outside of downtown, really close to like War Memorial Stadium. It was just a really cool experience, man. Like, Barry Pointer's just so down to earth. He just knows how to draw the best out of you. Oddly enough, you mentioned all the bands he worked with before. The Juliana Theory album he did, I think, is the album that, you know, that made us want to work with him. We just thought that album sounded really awesome. You know, it was like a rock album, but it had like, you know, pop sensibilities. You would have never guessed it was recorded in like a garage behind someone's house.
Right.
So, and we just heard really good things about him from Living Sacrifice. And, you know, we were like, yeah, we want to work with this guy. You know, he's not just a metal producer. You know, we see what he did with Juliana Theory. Maybe he can bring the best out of us. Maybe he can help us, you know, write songs that are, you know, rocking, but still have, you know, a good production and a lot of energy. I think that was our primary concern. We want a lot of energy on this album because we felt like, you know, Bombs, a lot of energy hadn't been captured on that one. But yeah, it was cool.
Well, the self-titled took you guys to the next level in many respects, including your first music video for I Don't Want to Change the World. I Just Want to Change Your Mind. Why did it take so long for us to get a Squad 5 music video? You know, I'm surprised that even during the Bombs era, you know, there were no videos. It seemed back then that, you know, any band, even smaller bands than you guys, had videos, you know. So
I don't know.
I'm surprised, as popular as you were, it didn't happen sooner.
I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe Brandon just wasn't really into the Bombs album. Didn't feel like trying to make a video. He thought he was going to make a ska video.
Yeah, he thought he was getting the next punk ska band. So
you need to do a ska version of Bombs, and
yeah, evidently. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know, but I do know that making the Change the World video was freaking awesome, and we actually
amazing.
It seems like every person we picked was because we would just really like that. I guess that's how it works. You just really like the work someone does with someone else. But Stretch Armstrong had done a video with this guy. I can't even remember his name. John, do you remember his name?
No idea.
Just remember he did a Stretch Armstrong video, and we thought it was awesome because it was just like this live video, but it had like, you know, shot on like Super 8 and just looked really cool because it was like them live. And it just looks like so grainy and so like, you know, so much energy behind it. But then there was like other stuff shot too, like, you know, B-roll or whatever you may want to call it that was going to be cut in later. And so we contacted that guy, and, you know, I think he was from Charleston or Columbia, which was only like 2 hours away from Savannah. And so we ended up filming it in Savannah where the band started. Filmed some of the B-roll stuff in really iconic places in Savannah, like the Thunderbird Inn and different like River Street and different places like that. And then I think we actually didn't we film in like a bar right next door to the tattoo parlor where we got our first started getting tattooed and stuff on Whitaker Street. And then of course played a show at a little club called 2424 that night, and he shot a lot of Super 8 footage of the live show that night. I think we end up doing, John? We did Change the World like 4 or 5 times that night. So he
I was gonna say like 6. Like yeah, we played it a bunch. Like we would play it, then I think we started out playing it twice, and then we would play some other songs, then we played it again. Then that's why it's like some shots super sweaty. Some shots super sweaty, some shots not so sweaty.
Exactly. Yeah. Well,
but it was a great show.
Yeah, and the video was awesome. And not to brag, but my parents allowed me at 15 years old to fly to Georgia to be a part of that. And you guys were gracious enough to let me hang out with you all day. And
I think aren't you in like one of the shots? Like you have a pretty prominent shot, right? Like you in the crowd.
I think so. There's one spot where you can point me out, and then there's another clip where all you see is a fist kind of pumping, and I'm pretty sure it's mine. So I claim that. Well, it was a great time, and you mentioned the bar, you know, like where you guys were playing pool. If fans hadn't noticed, Chris Klein goes to the jukebox. 121.
21. Yeah.
So
Chris was always good about
egg.
that sort of thing.
Yeah,
really cool.
So another change with the self-titled album was that the songwriting was no longer confined to the two of you. Adam and Dave became regular contributors. You used several of their songs from that point on. And so when or how was it decided that they were going to contribute? You know, was that always kind of the idea? You were always open to collaborations? How did that come about?
Well, I think Adam had contributed some stuff to the Bombs album for sure. Like I think there were some like guitar parts and different ideas that he brought to the table there. And Dave is just, Dave's just such a prolific songwriter, man. I mean, Dave can, you know, he plays drums, but he can pretty much play every instrument. He's a great lyricist. He's like, he's great at writing melodies, and harmonies. So, I mean, it just sort of progressed. I mean, he would just bring ideas and we'd be like, yeah, that's too good not to use. And I think that maybe we were even, you know, we were always kind of fans of bands where more than just one guy sort of wrote, you know, like The Clash had multiple songwriters.
Right.
You know, you had bands like U2 where they all shared songwriting credits regardless of who did what on the song. Like all four guys had the songwriting credits, you know. So I think we were just more moved towards the idea of like, yeah, it's like, you know, it sort of made sense through the first two albums and into Bombs that John and I were sort of like the main songwriters or like architects of the sounds that we were creating. But as it became more of like a super group, it became clear that there were other people in the band who, you know, could hear and write things that like I couldn't hear or write because, you know, for lack of a better word, I wasn't gifted in certain areas like they were gifted. And I will say to this day, no matter what people think of Dave Peterson or personal opinions anyone may have of him, like he's by far probably the most talented songwriter I think I've ever met. I mean, just prolific.
Okay, so favorite songs from Self-Titled.
The whole album.
I always wish you guys had played Wasted With You live more. I don't know if you ever played that one live, but
I don't think we ever played it live.
I don't think we ever have played it live.
Yeah, it's too hard to
too
pull
hard.
Well, like most of that stuff was me like experimenting in like open G tunings and different things on like acoustic guitars. Like
Oh, wow.
you would think like the riffs on the guitars were written by the guitar players, but they were written by the bass player who is in love with Keith Richards and trying to figure out his open tunings and writes like ridiculous like okay, all right, and then but of course they take it to like way better playing level than me. But
yeah,
I mean Change the World I wrote in my bedroom.
Yeah.
And then Dave
I mean, but even with
it.
Change the World, like didn't Chris come up with that guitar, the iconic guitar beginning to it? Like I don't think the song always started.
No, Change the World, yeah, just started out as like dun 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 dun. But then Dave came up with what do we do this progression of these notes and these notes, and then Chris came up with the it's like so it was like a whole like group effort of like like I started like in my bedroom on the acoustic guitar. I'm like dun dun, and then Adam's the one that decided to chop it up to dun 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 because mine was dun 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 dun. And I'm like, what about dun dun dun? I'm like, yeah, let's go dun 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 dun. That's fine.
But of course, that's a standout track on that album. Make You Dance, which was a Dave Peterson song. A great song. I like Make You a Star, which was kind of a conglomeration of a bunch of us writing together and had some like pretty interesting influences lyrically as far as like the lyrics to the song. And I mean, there's just so many on there. Screaming with the Sirens, I always thought was such a phenomenal song. So I love Turn It Up. Turn It Up is a great, like it's just an album track. It's not something you would have ever released as a single. The lyrics are basically gibberish. But that line,
it's
like,
off the back. It's off the back of a Yoo-Hoo bottle.
Yeah, it's off the back of the Yoo-Hoo bottle. But the line, just like the whole idea of just turn it up. I'm not afraid to die. Turn it up. Don't be afraid to die. Like that was just like me just mouthing things, and we're like, oh, this is cool. Let's have John do a Bruce Springsteen preaching thing in the middle of it, or
I remember that.
We've actually at the reunion
show. There's a video of that Bruce Springsteen show, and I was watching that later, and I was like, "Whoa, this is what Squad says."
Yeah, we stole that.
Yeah, they're like but, John, go in there with the harmonica mic and just do that preaching thing. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it was pretty awesome.
That's cool.
I think like What's the jam, dude? Boom, 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 boom.
Oh,
We play it live still.
No
It's so
Tomorrow.
fun, we can't remember
No Tomorrow.
No,
Yeah.
no Tomorrow. Yeah,
Great song.
That's
that
another.
started.
I think
that started out as a bass riff and became a song.
Yeah, and
Like,
I
where are
think
we
like
going from here?
actually the main melody for like the verses came from Dave. Like Dave was like, I was like kind of stuck. Like I don't know where I want to go with this verse melody, and Dave's like, hey, what about something like this? And he was like, he said some like scratch lyrics or something. And I'm like, I like the melody, but I'm thinking of going a different direction lyrically. And so I took his melody and put my lyrics over them, and it worked. Yeah, but I love No Tomorrow. I love Adolescent Night.
Adolescent Night's great. Yeah.
Yep.
We've played that. And actually the last time we played it, because typically when we used to play that back in the day, we didn't do the outro, the hold on part, we would just sort of end the song.
Right.
But the last time we played that, we played it as a 4-piece at Audio Feed, and we actually did do the outro. And I told the crowd, like, I want to do this thing I've seen other bands do that I've never had the chance to do. Everyone just turn on the flashlights on your phone. And we had everyone turn their flashlights on, and we turned all the stage lighting off, so that outro was just us and the crowd singing the hold on part.
Dust everywhere.
But it was only lit. Yeah, dust all in the air, and just the lights of their cell phones lighting everything. No stage lighting at all. But yeah, I mean, those are all standouts to me. Like,
That's
songs
awesome.
we still play live.
I remember Adolescent Night. I didn't know where it was going to go, so we kind of had the and then you came up with the what would become the what we will meet after midnight in the dark.
Yeah,
I don't know. It was like a big collaboration of things. So
that's No Tomorrow, John.
That was No Tomorrow, John. You just
oh yeah,
mixed
it
two
was.
songs.
Hey, you know what? I have writing credits on it. I'm allowed to do that.
That's all the same.
It's
It's all the same. Just all blends
I
together.
always liked the lyrics to turn it up. Snake Gone Wild, Guitar Wolf Child. That's about Chris, right? I mean, I just assume you're singing about Chris.
He's the guitar wolf, man. He's also Snake. I mean,
right.
He's so many things.
That's right.
And we would always tease him about like his sex appeal, and like because he would get so embarrassed about it, and we were just like, dude, Chris, you totally like the heartthrob. He would just go like, just shut up, just don't talk about that, because Guitar Wolf is like a Japanese like rock band that he would always talk about, because he would always say how they say lock and roll instead of rock and roll, which they literally did on their recordings. But he just loved Guitar Wolf, and so he was and we always called him Snake, because he loved Snake Plissken and Escape from LA and all that stuff. So he was a Snake Gone Wild Guitar Wolf child with a sex appeal you can't understand.
There you go. I mean,
that's what he is.
So so here's a fan question. Jeff, during this era, you became known for climbing up stage trusses and jumping into the crowd. Were you ever fearful of becoming injured? What did the band think, and what did your wife think?
I can't speak for my wife. I think she was scared every time. Most of the time I did it, she wasn't there unless it was Cornerstone. But I was scared every single time I got up there. But I would always, I think I told John this once or twice. I'm like, once you're up there, there's only one cool way down. Like, no one wants to see the guy climb back down the trestle. The only cool way down is to jump. And I think the first time I did it was at Cornerstone on one of the encore stages. I think that's the same year we had that pillow fight on stage with the feather pillows, and that was an epic year. But yeah, they caught me, and then once you get caught once, you're like hooked, right? So I did it at a few other festivals, but Cornerstone was the only one where I felt fully confident that people would catch me. Some other festivals, I'm like, I was hoping they catch me.
What was the one that we played like?
That was Spirit West Coast, I think.
No, not Spirit West Coast.
Where I jumped and I stuck it like a
yes,
gymnast.
That's so.
That was
Adam,
Spirit West Coast.
I'll tell you what. At least one band member of the or one member of the band was doing, praying the whole time. If he gets hurt, make it minimal. no back injuries, no, maybe just a broken leg, and no one caught him, and he just stuck the landing. And I'm like, okay, and we just kept going.
Yeah. In like biker boots too. I was wearing boots at the time and stuck it like a gymnast. I did use a couple of shoulders of like people who were near where I landed to sort of like slow my momentum, but it literally landed on my feet after jumping, I don't know, 20 feet, 24 feet off a lighting rig. I think on the Spirit West Coast one, we kind of realized that wasn't our scene. And
gosh, no. But we got to ride rides.
It. Yeah. I was trying to push it a little bit, and I was going to do it, but I was also not confident. So I sort of went feet first and stuck the landing.
So listen to me, girl, you gotta tell me that I'm not alone. My car's outside, I left it running if you're willing to go. We can get away from here.
So I hesitate to bring up this next topic because it does involve me, but it is a part of Squad's history. So I think it's important to mention, and that is Forever Young.
Forever Young.
The official Squad 50 cover band. Featuring Jeff and John.
Featuring members of the band.
That's right. So Forever Young had its debut at Cornerstone Festival 2002, and we did that for a total.
The world has never
years.
been the same.
Yeah. From 02 to 04. Do you guys remember how that came about? What's your recollection?
Not really.
How did we make that happen?
I think Jeff goes, "Hey, Adam wants to play some old songs." I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it."
Yeah, and I mean, by that time we weren't playing any old songs.
Yeah,
so.
And I go, what, like a generator stage? It's like, no, he's got a stage. I'm like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
I'm like, so what songs are we thinking? I remember it was either the first or second year Adam had to come up and play "You're the One" because I couldn't remember how the bass line went. The
I remember thinking it was going to be one of these things that was just like really awesome or just really awkward, and it just turned out to be really awesome because
it was.
I don't know.
Totally awesome.
There's something about Squad where like it's okay. Just throw it against the wall and let's see what happens. Okay, remember like there's a couple years at Cornerstone where we did like some cover sets on like Tooth and Nail Day.
Yep.
Like we put those cover sets together in like hotel rooms or in living rooms. Like we never really played them in front of it.
Never practiced them ever
per se, but everyone was unplugged and Dave was drumming on his legs. Right. And but we'd never played them in front of crowds, but we're just like, oh no, it'll be awesome. It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be great.
I remember we all on tour with the Gadgets when we put together the dance set. I think you posted that today, like the dance party set. We had never played any of those songs like in front of anyone, but we were on that Gadgets tour before Cornerstone and we started playing a few. And I remember us coming because I think their keyboard player was a big Bruce Springsteen fan, and we had learned Dancing in the Dark, and we played it just out of nowhere. And they were like, how do you guys like just do that? Like, how do you just play songs without having practiced them? And I'm like, I don't know. We just sort of do it. It's like, I know the lyrics, they know the chords and the drums, and we do it. Like, it's just what we do. But yeah, Forever Young was that's what, like, when I talk about like the spirit of Squad 50, that's what I feel like Forever Young embodied.
Who played drums? To find a drummer. We had to find a drummer.
Didn't Boogie?
Oh yeah, Boogie.
Yeah. So, and I'd never met Boogie yet at that point, but I'd heard of him, and I knew that there was this kid who loved Squad 50 and was a drummer, and that he always had his hair slicked back with a leather jacket, and that he would probably be at a Huntington show. So I went to a Huntington show, and sure enough, I found the greasy hair and the leather jacket, and I said, "Hey, you want to drum with me and Jeff and John?" And he was like, "Yeah, obviously." So it was a big deal for us. You guys took a chance and took a risk playing with two of your biggest fans, and I'm eternally grateful for that.
After that was done, like Lewis was there, and I think I remember him pulling me inside and said, "Dude, that could have gone so wrong. but it was so awesome. He's like it could have gone two ways. It could have been super awesome, or it could have been super bad. And he's like, it was so awesome. Like, and I think Lewis may have been the one who started getting me thinking about like the spirit of the band. You know, like what is the spirit of Squad 50? Like, you know, like I think because I'm sure we'll get to this in the narrative or whatever, but like I think we sort of lost the script heading into this next era. But like I think that was when it was sort of started planted in my heart that like, yeah, there was like a spirit. There was like this, like, you know, there was something special about what we were doing. And it wasn't so much about like us, it was more about like the band and the crowd together. And I'm not saying like those years, like by that time, you know, in 2002 when we played with you, like things were still really good. But as we get down the narrative, I'll probably elaborate on that a little more. But yeah, that was awesome, dude. Totally awesome.
So John, at some point during this era, after Self-Titled came out, you started playing bass in the Kick, primarily as a touring member whenever it didn't interfere with Squad. And the Kick was Louis D. Fabrizio's band, Louis being from Dear Ephesus and Tenderfoot. And Dave was actually a founding member of the Kick too,
Yes.
if I recall, but he didn't stick around for long. Anyways, the Kick would go through various members, would eventually morph into Gasoline Heart, which John, you've continued to play for pretty regularly, be a member of. And I'm curious, how were you viewing Squad at that time? Because it kind of seemed like your interests were going more toward the Kick, more so than Squad. Is that accurate? And if so, what would have been the cause of that?
Well, during Self-Titled, no. Like, it just happened that, you know, we were like, the Kick was based out of Orlando. All the members lived in Orlando, so it was easy to practice and do things. And I mean, Lewis was playing bass in the Kick before me, and I convinced him to play guitar. I'm like, let me be in the band, because I just wanted to play in the band when I wasn't like on the road or whatever. So Lewis started playing guitar. I became the bass player, and you know, it was a fun thing to do. And I did do a couple of like double duties. Like if the Kick was on the road with Squad, I'd play in both bands. I guess the real conflict comes to when we come to the next album.
Can I mention this as we're getting into the being courted by Capitol? Because Capitol actually started courting us before we did the Self-Titled. Like, we were on tour before we did that album. We were on tour with the Juliana Theory, who a bunch of major record labels were coming to see. And that's how Capitol first saw us. And I wanted to say before we got into this era that I said I had a story about the lyric explanations from Bombs Over Broadway. Well, when we were playing in Hollywood and Louis Bandak from Capitol saw us play, Chris gave him a copy of Bombs because that was the latest CD we had, which of course didn't have Chris or Dave on it. But Chris opened the CD and took the lyric explanations out before he gave it to Louis Bandak from Capitol Records. I said I had a story, and that's the story. Chris was like, yeah, we don't want these in there when you get this. Here you go.
Well, so John, one of the reasons I'm bringing this question up is Lewis actually did a recent interview with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and he indicated that you were even hesitant to sign the Capitol contract.
Yes.
So because you wanted to be able to continue to play for the Kick. Is that right?
Yes, that is 100% correct.
Okay.
The day that we were supposed to sign the contract, we were all in Winter Park, Florida, and we're supposed to sign the contract. We're about to leave for tour. I think the first show is in Tallahassee, and we're downtown Winter Park, and we're all together. And I pretty much told the band, like, I'm not going to sign the contract. I think I'm over it. You guys can find somebody else. Obviously, everyone was upset, but at that time, I had just met like who would become my wife, and then I liked the stability of being in the band, that everyone was in the same place. like not spread out across multiple states, where we had band practice like weekly, and I was just feeling it at the time, and so eventually I did decide to do the tour, and did eventually decide to sign the contract. Basically, Jeff and I had a long talk in Tallahassee. Like, we made it this far, let's just see where it goes. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I stayed in the band. But yeah, I was that close to not. I'm like, I don't really think I want to do it.
Okay, so it's 2004. You're signed to Capitol Records, which is a huge accomplishment. You guys were one of the only bands from the Christian scene to attain major label status. I think that's a huge deal, something to be proud of. Well, I mean, there's, you've got your POD and you've got your Blind Side and your MXPX, but, I mean, in terms of the sea of bands that you were in, in the Christian market, there's not many bands that can say that, oh yeah, we went on to be on a major label, Yeah. And the album itself was great. Again, from a fan's perspective, music is awesome. Albums are getting better. And this album was produced by Matt Wallace.
Uncle Matty. Uncle Matty.
Well, he's mainly produced a lot of famous pop rock groups, but also the Replacements, which is pretty cool. So what was it like working with Matt?
Madness. It was awesome.
Yeah.
He was
really fun.
He was like the craziest human being, in the best ways. Like, so much fun.
He was out there.
Totally inappropriate, totally crude, all the time. But also, we called him Uncle Matty.
Looked like your favorite uncle in the world.
Yeah, like your favorite uncle, but also the uncle that was also just a little bit like that lacked the filter. But no, he was awesome, man. Like, that was the first time I felt like, someone like Dwayne Barron sat down with us and listened to us play the songs and had ideas. I think Barry did a little bit of that too. Like, the first couple of days we were with Barry, we played through the songs and he got ideas. But like, Matt really, he really, pre-production was really pre-production. We practiced in a practice space in California, outside of Hollywood for I don't know what, John, a week, where he would just come and listen to us play songs for a week and
like I said,
suggestions.
We had 30 that got whittled down to 20 something.
Yeah.
And then we just kept chopping from there until we got to the songs that made the album.
Literally, it was like going to work. Like, you got up, you went to the practice space, you play a few times, get warmed up, Uncle Matty shows up, you start playing the songs, and he just starts coming up with different ideas. Like, I think Buy American was almost wasn't it sort of like a country?
It was a punk song. It was super fast. Super fast.
Yeah, it was really crazy. And he thought of the idea, why don't we slow that down? And we slowed it down. I mean, he also came up that whole album. I think we're tuned a whole step down, John.
Some songs are a half step, some songs are a whole step down.
Yeah, because he thought my voice would open up better, half or whole steps down. Where that was the first time anyone had ever suggested that. It was cool, man. It was really cool. And wasn't Hillary Duff there?
Hillary Duff was there. She was in the same rehearsal space.
She was rehearsing in a few doors down. I think we actually saw her get into her limo one day or something. It's
I saw her outside.
Hillary Duff. Yeah.
And then Blindside was recording at the same time. They were in the same complex as us. Where we were staying.
Stayed in the same condominiums as us, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, we're
met the Jackson family.
Yeah.
Who we meet? Tito? Jermaine. We met Jermaine, didn't we?
Jermaine Jackson. Jermaine.
Yeah.
So I sometimes jokingly call Late News Breaking the Dave album. And I don't mean that as a bad thing because I love Dave's songs. But he contributed the majority of songs for that album. Whereas Jeff, you only had 3, Adam had 2. And so it is interesting to see how Squad morphed, you know, from primarily Jeff as songwriter, Jeff and John, you know, to being one of the least contributors on Late News Breaking. And so did that seem totally normal to you guys? Everyone was happy about that? Dave's songs were just so good. Or was that some at Matt Wallace's direction?
No,
you know,
I think it was just like this idea. I think also at that time we decided to give everyone songwriting credits on every song, regardless of whose song it was. Kind of like the YouTube mentality of it doesn't matter who brought the song or who wrote the lyric, you know, it's all of us together making the final product.
right.
But yeah, I mean, I think Dave was just the most prolific. Like Dave could write 10 songs in the time I could write half a song, you know? Like, I think it was just like clear that, like, you know, he had a larger arsenal of songs to choose from than any of us, you know? Like Adam's a pretty prolific songwriter, but not at the level like Dave is.
I'm not sure how many fans know this, but the legendary Mike Knott, as well as Ronnie Martin from Joy Electric, have cameos on Late News Breaking. How did their involvement come about? Was that just they were in the area, or?
Well, yeah, they were both in Southern California at the time. I mean, Mike Knott, like, not so much Dave and not so much Adam and Chris, but for me, Dave and John, like LSU and the Lifesavers or LS Underground, whatever band Mike Knott may have been in at the time, were like really big influences on us, because, you know, the three of us had come up in like the early Christian alternative stuff way before Tooth and Nail. Bands like, you know, LSU, The Choir, Adam Again. I mean, there's a ton, but those were like the major ones I can think of that I can think of right now. But the prayer chain, who came out even just a little bit later than that, with Tim Tabor and all those guys, and the Violet Burning. I remember Dave and I would always talk about the Violet Burning. Like, we're just like really big Violet Burning fans. But anyway, you know, we had done a thing with Mike Knott at Cornerstone where we played Rock Stars on Heroin with him on vocals. And, you know, we just sort of kept in touch with him after that. And he was sort of like, you know, you say Squad's kind of like your heroes. Like Mike Knott was kind of a hero to us. And we're like, dude, it'd be so cool if we could get him to come in and just do some vocals of some sort, whatever it may be. And Dave had the idea of the I am the man, this is the man. And of course, Mike took it and just did what Mike does, just turned it into something even cooler than we could have ever thought of, because he's just so out there. And Ronnie, we had met at festivals and different things, and just sort of kind of became pals with him. And he's just, I always feel like I have this list in my head of just genuinely good human beings, and Ronnie Martin is on there. But yeah, he just we just became friends through playing festivals and through being on Tooth and Nail together and stuff. And being in Southern California, we'd see him and we'd hang out a little bit. I remember we saw him in a bookstore one time, maybe at the Block in Orange, just out of the blue. He was wearing a Squad 50 sweatshirt with a Cobra on it. It was just so, I mean, we just Ronnie's just part of, you know, that whole period of time. Well, and yeah, so we asked them both and they both said yes. So.
And he's actually going to have another cameo on the new EP, right?
He is, yeah. I've heard, like, Chris has sent us little bits and pieces. I think he just laid down a ton of stuff on one song mainly, and Chris is just sort of picking through it to figure out what fits where. And Ronnie just sort of just laid down a bunch of stuff and said, "Here's a bunch of stuff, you know, see what you can do with it."
So during this era, you know, Late News Breaking era, being on Capitol Records, you toured with notable acts such as Andrew WK and Jesse Malin from D-Generation.
Yeah.
Any highlights or takeaways from those tours? You know, what was it like opening for those guys, and did you hang out with them a lot, get to know them at all?
The Andrew WK tour was kind of weird because that was like sponsored by like a cell phone company.
corporate
It's like a
sponsor,
corporate sponsored tour, and it was just really poorly planned. And I mean, Andrew and his band were really cool. We didn't hang out with them a ton, but they were really cool guys. And then I thought Jesse Malin, I was like just meeting another hero from D-Generation, and I thought that was just awesome. We actually shared a bus with them, and was a really cool experience. What did you think, John?
I mean, I think the coolest, like Jesse was like, loved Jesse and Johnny Pie and all those guys.
Yeah, man.
But I think the shows we played with Social Distortion were like the best. Like you couldn't ask to meet like nicer people that you grew up admiring.
Yeah.
They were just like the nicest people in the world. Like every single person in the band, their entire crew, just like top notch.
Yeah, that was probably definitely one of the highlights of all of the squad years, was getting to open for Social Distortion on a handful of shows on the West Coast and Southwest. Just freaking unbelievable.
Well, so I was curious and wanting you guys to explain your perspective between the Christian and secular industries. So, you were in both. And, what was it like going from one to the other? Any pros and cons that come to mind when you compare them? It's not uncommon for bands to speak negatively about the Christian industry. And so I'm just curious, did you find the secular industry to be any better?
I mean, no, they're both just trying to make money. I mean, it's the thing, like they want you to be successful so they can make money off of you. So they pour their money into you, hoping to make money. And if it doesn't work, then, if it doesn't take off, then, it's like on to the next thing. And
the music industry is the music industry. It's just, I guess the Christian music industry is peddling to a certain audience. And I think that's something we came to understand. I can't speak for it now. I'm not in either one of the industries now. And the music industry, needless to say, is very different than it was when we were in it. There wasn't streaming services and things like that back then. But I will say, and not to say this is a bad thing or a good thing, but, one thing I think that, we became aware of after, we were less naive like we were when the first album came out, is that, music industry, regardless of what title you put on it, secular or Christian, was trying to make a profit. They were trying to make a profit. So they were trying to push that product to whichever audience they were aiming it towards. And, so it was a business. And I think once we came to think of it as a business, it seemed less two-faced. It's like, it's just a business. They're both businesses, and they're both trying to operate how a business operates. Like they're trying to make a profit, right? I will say though that once we got into this secular music industry, that at least we didn't have to explain our lyrics. So that was nice.
No inserts. No inserts.
No inserts. That's actually a great segue into this next question. There was some controversy with Late News Breaking among your Christian fan base due to profanity on some of the songs. And that was a new thing for Squad. It was different. And some of your fans, didn't receive that too well. What I'm wondering is how are you guys processing that on your side? Did you feel like there was a break with your Christian fan base? Were you trying to break away from that history? Or did you feel like your Christian fans, had abandoned you, so to speak?
I never felt like the fans had abandoned us. I think that we were just like to the point where, like, I don't know. It's hard to put myself back in that headspace. I was like, 20 something years old back then, I guess getting close to 30. I'm 45 now. So I'm so far removed from it that, like, it's almost hard to put myself back in that headspace. I will say that, like, I say words like shit or damn it nowadays, and I don't really even think twice about it. I would actually consider my faith to be much more profound now than it was even back then. And I don't know if we were trying to prove something. I guess just as a language teacher now, like, you know, I teach foreign language. I just think of like words as words. And I don't know, I don't want to sound too stupid about this, but like, to me, it's not so much the word you use as the intent of the word you use. Like, to me, you could be just as hateful to someone if you call them an idiot as if you call them an asshole, because really it's the intent of the word, right? I don't know. I don't know if at the time I was in that same headspace or not, but I know just recently I just think like it's not so much the words we use as the intent of the words we use. And I think maybe that's sort of where we were going there. Like that's like some of those songs like Dave had written, and so they already had like the word shit in them. And of course, if I'm singing it, I have to be all right with singing it. I don't want to be like thinking to myself like, well, I just got to do this even if I'm not okay with it. So I was okay with it. Like I was okay with it. Like, as I just thought, it's just a word, and I don't think another word fits better. Like if we had said crap there, to wash the crap off the street, like, or the dirt off the street, it didn't carry the same lyrical weight as like the word that was there. So I guess as an artist, quotation mark, I was okay with delivering that line. Even though I didn't write the line, I was okay with delivering the line because I felt the sentiments of the line. But so yeah, certainly, I mean, we had to have known, right? I mean, like I said, it's hard to put myself back in that headspace, but if you're putting out your first album since you were on a Christian label, you know, you're putting out your first secular quotation mark album, of course we had to know that was going to like rub people a certain way. I mean, but you look, I mean, even when we weren't looking for controversy, we found controversy. Sucks. Bombs over Broadway. Oh my God, you have to put a lyric in there. What are you talking about? Bombs? What is this, like about terrorism? No, it's not. Here's a lyrical sheet to explain what we're trying to say. To me, it was just part of that progression. But I can honestly say, I know it did bother people. I know it bothered my wife. Like, she couldn't understand why, but you know, she respected me, and I would try to explain it to her, and she's like, well, I would have just chose to say something else. And I'm like, well, that's good, because that's you, and you're not me, and I'm not you. And it's okay. We have different convictions and different ideas and perspectives on things, you know, like, so honestly, that's like, I guess my answer. I can't put myself fully back in that headspace, but from the way I would think about it, it's like, yeah, of course we knew it would have ruffled some feathers. I mean, how could it not?
Sure. Okay, well, the band would unfortunately break up nearly a year later, pretty quick after the album was released. You know, you when you got signed, were you thinking that this was the beginning of a long music career? You know, or were you already seeing signs of decline? And how soon do you think you started seeing that?
I think after we finished the album, at least for me, John, I'll let you give your perspective too. Like, for me, after we finished the album, I felt like we thought like we'd done something good. I know Dave was really excited. Adam and Chris were both really excited about the album. I remember like Dave calling me. I was in New York over Christmas in 2003 with my wife. And I remember Dave just being like really excited about the first mixes we were getting back, and just, you know, just so full of love and so full of gratitude for the band. And so I think there was a lot of like hope and promise at first. At least that's what I felt. John, what did you think afterwards?
I don't know what I really thought. I mean, because, you know, like,
you got married right after it.
Yeah, right after we finished recording, I got married and then went on my honeymoon. And I don't know. I don't think it's a terrible record, but I don't think I ever was in love with the record. Like, I was in love with Self-Titled, but I don't think that, like, to this day, I don't think I've ever really gone back and listened to it. Not that I'm not a fan of it, but it may be my least favorite Squad 5-0 record. Is that too controversial to say? Like, I don't really, nothing about it really grabs me at all. I'll tell you this, the best thing about Capitol Records is that we were on the same label as the Beach Boys, which was great because I got to get all their CDs. And then
the Beatles.
And the Beatles, who I do not like. and I got to get all their CDs, and I traded them all in at Park Ave CDs in Winter Park, Florida, and got $250 worth of credit for CDs.
Awesome.
So thank you, Capitol Records. And I bought a bunch of reggae records with all the money I got back.
That's so awesome. Like you said, John, like I don't really ever listen back to that album. It was fun. I had a lot of fun recording it. Like,
no, it was a great
that
time.
was a really cool time. But I do really honestly feel like Adam, I've mentioned a few times, like the spirit of the band. I felt like the spirit of Squad had kind of got crushed at that point, and we were like really consumed with trying to make it. Like it became less about like just putting out music and connecting with a crowd, and became more about like, we've got to make it. We've got it. This has got to be our living. And like it was like, you know, we have to break big. We have to become famous. I know personally on stage sometimes during that period between the release of that album and the breakup of the band, I had become a pretty big asshole on stage and off stage. I think back on some of the things I said on stage from time to time during that period, and I'm like, man, I can't. And it was nothing like crazy, but it was just something that was so far from like the heart of the band and so far from the spirit of the band that we had originally started in our bedroom in Savannah, you know? But yeah, I don't listen to that album hardly at all either.
Like Jeff said, like the record was a lot of fun to make, but I never enjoyed playing any of those songs live. Like I just never like, you know, it's like, oh, I'll look at the set list and see what's coming up. I'm like, okay. But I mean, I don't know. I have a total disconnect with that record. Like,
good way to put
I
it.
mean, maybe I'll go back and listen to it, but you know, I don't think I've listened to, like, I honestly don't think I've listened to a single song off of that in at least 5 or 6 years, maybe. Like not even like one song. Like I just have a total disconnect with the record. And it's not because it didn't do well and we didn't become superstars or whatever. It's like maybe it is what Jeff says, like this a spirit of the band. Like it was like great memories, but like I guess I just like I have no connection to that record at all. Like I even forget like I think of Self-Titled as our last record and I'm like, oh yeah, we made another record. I mean just to be honest, I mean that's just
Sure.
And not that it's a bad record. Like I just have no feelings. Like I have no personal connection with it. I'm like, okay.
It's odd because like when we've done like a couple of reunion shows, you know, and I had a friend of mine that I washed windows with, who was in the band Showbread, John Giddens. He played like guitar in Showbread. He actually came and saw Squad play with 5 Iron in Jacksonville back in 2018. And he was a big Squad fan. He's like, oh yeah, man, it was awesome. It's just, you guys played a lot of songs off Self-Titled, and it's just Late News was like the album for me, man. Late News. I was like, really? I don't know anyone who was like, Late News was the album for me. But I guess it was the album for some people. Like you just never know what like people are gonna be into.
Yeah, just like Bombs was the album for people. It's
yeah,
like, okay.
Bombs was the album for people too.
That's right.
I'm a self-titled sort of guy myself.
I know. Poor Self-Titled sitting right in between those two. Like Bombs, Late News, Self-Titled.
Well, so looking back, you know, is there any one thing you would point to and say, here's why we broke up? I know you both have mentioned the spirit of the band had changed, things like that. You know, is that what you would say it was, or is there something else you would point to?
I think so. I think that just like it's hard to keep a band together because you have like so many different personalities, so many different like egos involved,
so many different
and also,
states, so many different states you live in.
Yeah, so many different states you live in. You know, I think at the time the band broke up, I was getting paid more than everybody else because at the time, I guess I felt like I had more things to pay for. I had a family with 2 kids, and I mean that wasn't really fair to the other guys, you know, but it was like I can't tour if I don't make this much money because I have to somehow pay my bills when I'm on the road. And I know that probably created resentment. Well, why is he getting paid more on the road when we're all doing the same amount of work and we're all contributing the same amount. And that wasn't really fair, for me at the time to kind of demand that. I wasn't like demanding it because I thought I was a star. I was demanding it just because like I wouldn't be able to do it. Like it was more or less like a hostage situation. If you guys still want to tour, then I need this much money. So that's hard to deal with. John had found another band that he loved playing with, and they all lived, like he said, they all lived together, and him and Lewis are like best friends, and his wife's in Florida, and you can totally understand why he'd want to do that. I will say that like our very last show we ever played before the band broke up was in Orlando. John, I don't know if you remember this. We booked the show ourselves. The show was insane. It was like so much fun. And I remember saying after that show, I was like, dude, we should just get rid of our manager, get rid of our booking agent, manage ourselves, book ourselves, and let's just do this thing DIY. And I remember feeling like that's what we should do. That's what we should do. And I think maybe like a week later, when we were like maybe a week home from the road, Chris Klein called and quit the band.
And then once Chris quit, Dave quit.
Yeah, that was the
Dave
first
quit,
domino.
Adam quit.
Yeah, because we'd all said like this was the 5 that we were gonna, it was these 5, and we were either gonna, make it or it was gonna break it. And once Chris was out, that's Adam and Dave were like, yeah, we're out, because this 5 or nothing.
And here's what's great, Adam. The last show was in Orlando. I own the van. They drive the van all the way back to Philadelphia. They quit the van. The van's in my name. The van is in my name. Me and my wife on Mother's Day weekend have to get plane tickets, fly to Philadelphia. Chris Klein and his now wife, Jamie, pick us up, take us out to a very nice diner for breakfast, drive us to Adam's house to get my van that they drove all the way back to Philadelphia. We drive straight all the way back to Florida and make it in time for Mother's Day. Boom.
That's amazing. Well, so after the breakup, an unreleased song was put on your MySpace page, Easy to Shoot, which I assume was a Dave song.
No, it's an Adam song, actually.
It's an Adam song, yeah.
Oh, I stand corrected.
So we were demoing songs.
Yeah, Dave had to move his floor tom from the right side to the left side on the other side of his hi-hat. And that's how he was able to do all the weird drum things.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I was just curious why, is there any reason why that didn't make the cut for the record? I mean, ran out of space or what?
It was voted out.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly, I don't remember.
We have a really good version of Clampdown that Matt Wallace recorded too, but I don't know where that is.
Oh,
Adam might have it.
Yeah, that was cool.
You just point and click at the heart of everybody. It's the wizard to call your number when I want something you can use me.
Okay, well, after Squad broke up, most of the members kept doing music to various degrees. Adam and Dave had their own band, Adam and Dave's Bloodline. They've also played for the band Marah. Chris has had various projects, including some stuff with Me Without You at one point. Most recently, 121's new EP, and the Liberandos with his wife, Jamie.
Yeah.
John, you've continued to play with Gasoline Heart. I think you've also done stuff for other local guys and friends in the area, like maybe Mike Dunn.
Richard
else?
Sherfy and All God's Children. Sherfy and All God's Children. But our pal Richard passed away a year ago, so pretty much everyone's moved out of town. Lewis is or back and forth between here in New York. Most everyone went to Nashville for the most part.
Vegas.
Oh, wow.
So I'm just working in orthopedic care.
Nice. Jeff, immediately after Squad, you created a new group called The Reformation. And then later a band called Holy Holy. And you had some recordings.
I forgot about Holy Holy.
Yeah, you had some recordings on MySpace, which were great songs. But those groups were very short-lived. Any particular reason why? What was your goal with those projects?
The Reformation just came out of me reading Martin Luther's biography, And I actually just went down to Florida. I think like me, John, Lewis, Jeffrey Rosari all played on that and just sort of created these like couple of songs. It was just kind of fun just to see where it was going. And
was Eric Jackson a part of that too, or not?
Was Eric with us, John?
I think so.
That band, Letter Kills, that we toured with, one of our last tours, they actually asked me to join their band when we were down there doing the Reformation demos. A couple of them, their singer quit, and they're like, you're the only guy we would want to do it. And I was like, I'm not moving to San Diego.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, I was like, oh, I'm flattered, but I'm not looking to move to San Diego. We got a wife and 2 kids. So. Yeah, and then I met a guy that was washing windows with me. This guy named Zach. He was Zach Boland. He was a student at Savannah College of Art and Design. He's about 10, 12 years younger than me. He was volunteering at the same church I was volunteering at with like the youth group. He did music. He started doing he became like the youth worship pastor there. And yeah, we started recording music in his apartment. That's what the Holy stuff is. It's just him and I writing some songs there. And I do listen back to that stuff. And I'm like, hey, this was pretty good. Zach actually is like the founding member of Citizens and Saints, which is like a pretty popular worship band right now. But yeah. And then, I ended up, like John said, he's, working at a podiatrist's office. I went back to school. Orthopedic. Sorry, what's the difference? What's podiatrist? What are podiatrists?
Foot. That's a foot doctor. That's a foot doctor.
Orthopedist. Might be. I eventually just I started volunteering with like the junior high group at my church, and sort of thought maybe that was what I was going to do. Maybe I was going to go into like youth ministry, and but then just sort of more felt like I was being caught into like the public school system, and decided I wanted to be like a teacher. I thought I'd teach middle school. So for the past 10 and a half, well, actually 11 years now, for the last 11 years, I've been teaching Spanish in public high schools here in the Savannah area. So, and I really truly do feel like it's my calling,
So Jeff, in 2008, you did guest vocals for Showbread. On their album Nervosa, the song The Goat. And Showbread is from the same town as you guys are, right? Savannah.
No.
They're from Effingham County, which is
the
next county up, which is Guyton, Georgia. Guyton, Georgia. Savannah. Effingham County, which is where they're from, is the county my wife teaches in. It's like the next county above our county. So technically, it's the greater Savannah area.
So I know you've been friends with them for a long time. I think they had been fans of Squad's for a while. So was that a cool experience, being asked to do that and doing that song? It
totally was. I mean, we had played with Showbread a few times. I always think they were like sort of the next wave after us. After the next Tooth and Nail wave. When Tooth and Nail Solid State really started becoming more famous. For their bands that would end up on Warped Tour, and not so much at Cornerstone, although a lot of those bands play Cornerstone too. But I always think of Showbread as sort of that next wave. They were the next generation. So yeah, it was cool to be asked by them, because by that time I wasn't in a band anymore, wasn't really doing music, and they were like, hey, we have this song, here's the lyrics, here's the melody sort of we're looking for like an Alice Cooper sort of delivery. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And honestly, like, they sent the tracks to my church. Zach Boland, who I'd mentioned earlier, like the church had a studio, and we recorded my vocals in the church's studio with Zach engineering it and sort of sending it back to them.
Well, speaking of Showbread, Squad's first big reunion show in 2012 at the final Cornerstone Festival was partly inspired by Mike from Showbread, right? If I understand that correctly.
I think
he was trying to get you guys to do it.
Yeah, we were actually going to have him play guitar.
Yeah, and then he couldn't make it at the last minute.
Yeah, he couldn't make it. Yeah, Yeah, that whole, at first they were like going to pay us. I think it was like $1,000. And we're like, oh, that's cool. That'll give everyone gas money, and we'll all get out there to play it. But then Cornerstone, of course, is like the golden standard. But Tom Fest, it was a close second, man. Especially Tom Fest, the original one up in Stevenson, Washington. Those were magical, man. Like magical festivals.
At the 2012 show, you two are the only former members of Squad, that played in that lineup. You had Hired Guns play for you, and so I thought we would give those guys a quick mention. CJ Mask,
CJ,
which friend of John's from Florida, played guitar. CJ's also been in various musical projects, including the band Pacifico, right? He was, I believe, on one of those albums.
He's on the new album.
Is he? Okay, cool. Yeah. Landon Jennings was the other guitar player.
Landon did
fan, out of
he was
Kansas
in
City.
Showbread.
He was also in Showbread. And then the drummer, remind me who played drums. I think he was from KC too, but I don't recall who he was.
Jake.
And he had played in what band?
He played in Chariot.
Chariot.
He played in Chariot.
Oh, he was in the Chariot. Okay, so Jake from the Chariot.
Yeah. Jake was cool.
That's awesome.
Jake was
we
awesome.
honestly didn't meet Jake until we got to Kansas City, and we're like, hey Jake, you're playing drums.
So when you think back to Squad's career, when you think of all the different eras of the band, which era was your favorite? Which era do you have the most nostalgia for?
I think mine is like the very beginning. Like we talked about at the beginning, 97, that first like tour. That's probably the one I'm most nostalgic for, because I think back on that and I just think, oh, the things we didn't know. We had no idea what was ahead of us. That first Cornerstone was just insanely magical. Later on that year, we end up in, LA. We meet the Jones family, who we end up crashing with for like, it seemed like forever. They put us up forever.
At least 2 months.
That's when we first, on our way out to California, that's when we first met Five Iron in Denver, and then we go out, or maybe that was like later on. Maybe we went across I-10 the first time. But I do remember meeting like Peg Leg and Dave from the Dingies, and Dave was also in the Supertones. I met Jason Carson. That whole Southern California, like tooth and nail scene just seemed like, oh man, this is what it's like. Yeah, this is the Southern California I imagined. Just so wide-eyed, hanging out with Scott Stiletta from Plank Eye, or meeting the Halo Friendlies for the first time, or hey, isn't that Mark Solomon from Stavesacre / The Crucified? Like, just things like that were just so surreal. Like, these are bands that you loved and liked, and you couldn't believe that you were like really meeting them for the first time. Or when you met them, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is you. Like, oh my God, you're Dave from the Supertones. It's like, oh no, you're Dave. Dave's freaking awesome. Peg Leg's freaking awesome. And then driving from LA up to Portland and then over to Stevenson, Washington to do Tom Fest. Yeah, it's just beautiful. We'd never been up in that part of the country in our lives. And it was just awesome, man. It just really was. Like POD hadn't really blown up at that time, and they were at Tom Fest and Cornerstone, and we got to talk to them and hang out with them. And, MX was just starting to blow up, and they were at Tom Fest and Cornerstone, meeting them and talking. Like, it was just like the whole world was in front of you,
That 97 tour, like La Mirada, California became like Savannah West. Like, that became our home. Like, we were based out of there, and the Jones family were like the best thing in the world. Like, just I can imagine myself now with kids like, yeah, we're just gonna take in this group of guys and come live here. We'll cook you food, like, and then all the friends would come over. We hang out, and I don't know, it was just like a magical time, And before we started touring, like, I think the furthest west maybe we'd ever been was Pensacola, Florida, for the most part, somewhere in that area. And the furthest
Unless
north,
you count Arkansas when we met Jason.
Oh yeah, Arkansas. That's true. We went to Arkansas.
That might have been the furthest west.
But we hadn't really now. Like I've been to every state but 2, North Dakota and Alaska. I'm gonna knock those out someday. But just being a kid from Savannah, Georgia, and not even thinking that you were gonna like, see like all this stuff. It was definitely magical. 98 holds a special place because that was like when people started kind of knowing who we were a little bit. So that, I mean, it seems like 97, 98 almost blended together with like Jeff's like wedding, like as a breakup point, and it like, oh, hey, here's the wedding. Then they go on the honeymoon, then we start all over again.
Yeah.
And then I'd say like definitely recording of the self-titled record, and then that year of like 2002 was just super awesome. That was just, we had the album release shows, and like definitely the year 2002. It was just, I don't know, that was just a real special year for me.
I am curious who some of your favorite bands were in the Christian scene, and I don't mean just bands you were friends with, but I'm curious.
Yeah.
Were there bands that you genuinely liked listening to?
Adam Again, Violet Burning.
Still rock those Violet Burning albums.
Anything Mike Knott was on. So
I love Starflyer.
Yeah, Starflyer for sure. Oh, Joy Electric by far. Some of the best shows of my life were Joy Electric shows. Those were just amazing shows. Yeah. Luxury. I was a big fan of Luxury.
Oof, Luxury.
Loved Luxury. Loved Luxury.
They're like Orthodox priests now. It's like 3 of the 4. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, I also like, I mean, as far as contemporary artists, most of those artists were around before us or just slightly before us, but I still love, like, I listen to like the Dogwood album Thick and Thin like all the time. Like the production's not great, but but those songs like take me back to 97. Like I remember hearing that album for the first time at Tom Fest 97, and I guess it just sort of sticks with you. Like when I hear that album, I'm like, oh yeah, that's taking me back to a time and a place in my life. I like the first Dingy's album a lot. I think it's a really good album. Rebel Youth is probably one of the better Tooth and Nail songs that out there. So I can say that.
Going off the 97 Tom Fest, which was probably the best festival ever. Seriously, it was so great. The Huntington's Fun and Games always brings me back to that. If I listen to that record, it brings it's so I listen to it while I mow the lawn.
Yeah, that's because that was before High School Rock, right? Like they had just gotten signed to Tooth and Nail at that point.
Fun and Games, so good, man.
Were there any bands that you had rivalries with? Any bands that you just didn't get along with, or something like that? It might be a dangerous question to ask.
There was probably a few bands we made angry, but like just because we were like mischievous, or maybe buttholes. I don't know. We jumped on POD's. We jumped on POD's catwalk at Cornerstone when they specifically asked us not to get on the catwalk.
We or you? We or you?
I'm sorry. I jumped on POD's catwalk. Listen, I'm an Enneagram 7, but I have a strong 8 wing. And when you tell me not to do something, I want to do it. Don't get on the catwalk. I want to get on the catwalk. Don't jump off the light rig. I want to jump off the light rig. Don't leave the stage. I want to leave the stage. But anyway, yeah, I think POD was not very pleased with us at that point. And I think like at some points of the Juliana Theory tour that maybe Brett didn't like me too much because I would just, and again, it's not we, I guess it's I, but I would just make jokes that I didn't think were like, they weren't insulting. They were like kind-hearted.
Sure.
Like I would always call their van Mr. Maroon because they toured in a maroon van, and I would say how Mr. Maroon would pass us on the freeway and tissues were just coming out of the windows because they were so emo, and like the audience would laugh, but then like I think like Brett secretly just didn't like that. Or
sure,
like one time we toured with Project 86 And,
oh man, I was about to
think we
bring
should-
up that story.
And I think one time, like, that's when Schwab had like an afro.
The afro.
And we played a show with them in like Maryland, and I found a clown wig, like a rainbow clown afro wig, and I put it on stage, and I started saying, "Let's go, boys!" And they all started just going like, right, and then I was like going,
No, you went,
parade!
hey, you went, I quit it now.
Yeah. Which Schwab said was actually really hilarious, but he said, and I love Schwab because he would talk to you like he was so sincere. He'd just be like, dude, honestly, it's hilarious. Okay, it's hilarious, but it's hilarious when it's just us on the bus joking about it, but like not in public, because project's very intense. Like they're not cracking jokes in between songs.
You know what was funny is that we would have Randy. We would have Randy introduce us, and he was so good. Their guitar player. He was so good at introducing us, and Schwab put like a nix to it. He's like, "You can't do that anymore." He's like, "What?" He's like, "You can't do that anymore." The image of the band.
Image of the band.
Have to
Which I get. I mean, they're a very serious band with very serious lyrical content, and I mean, dude, we're just jokesters, man.
What about favorite cities to play? Any favorite hotspots of where you're like, oh, every time we go to this city, it's going to be an amazing show. We got a ton of fans there.
Kansas City, Missouri.
Kansas City. Yes, for sure. The Glass House in Pomona, California.
Glass House, Pomona. Atlanta.
Seattle was always great. Portland was always great.
Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, where it all started, for sure. Jacksonville.
Orlando
was always great. We always had really good shows in Bowie, Maryland, right outside
Oklahoma
of
City.
DC. OKC.
Yeah,
for sure.
OKC, Oklahoma City.
Very cool.
Omaha. Would you say
Omaha was always good? Yeah, man. I think Omaha was always good.
We never did good in the Northeast.
Yeah, anything past like DC, we never did like too hot in. But dude, Minneapolis, we had a lot of really good shows.
Yeah, Minneapolis is great. Minneapolis was awesome.
Really good shows there. We're gonna forget somebody, and they're gonna be so offended. Chicago was always good. Arizona, dude, Phoenix was always off the
Phoenix
hizzy.
was always amazing.
Phoenix was the first place I ever heard a crowd sing our songs back to us besides a festival. Like we were running late to Phoenix because the van broke down.
And we thought we were going to be late. We thought we were going to be late, but they don't change their time.
Yeah, so they were actually on California time.
So we're like, yes, we had no idea.
So this brings us back to the current day. We've come full circle. I did want to ask about matters of faith and religion. Obviously Squad was overtly Christian in the first half of your career. And so I think a natural question is, where are you today with that? Would you say that you're on the same path you always were, or have there been any dramatic changes in what you believe?
I mean, I would say that I'm on the same path. Like, I still believe wholeheartedly that Jesus is the Christ and the Son of the living God. I think my faith is a little more profound than it was, of course. Like, by the time we started Squad, I'd been a Christian for like, I think 4 or 5 years. And now, here I am at 45. I became a Christian at 17. So, done a lot of living between 17 and 45, but I feel like my faith is still rooted in the truth that is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Like I still find my hope and my life in him. I still see my worldview, through the lens of my faith and through the lens of Christ. And I mean, I know I have a lot of growing to do. I'm short-tempered. I often make jokes about like, I try to pray in the mornings on the way to work. I have about like a 20-minute drive, and I pray out loud because I have ADD. And if I don't pray out loud, I lose train of consciousness. And several occasions, more than I'd like to admit, I've been praying and thanking God for like a sunrise that I get to experience on my drive in to work. And then someone cuts me off in traffic and I call that person an asshole in like the same breath as like, this sunrise is beautiful. And, you know, and then I'm like, you asshole. And also, God, if we could work on my temper and my patience, that, you know, but of course, the only way to work on your temper and patience is to have them tested and learn to, you know, deal with them. But no, I mean, I most definitely, you know, I consider myself a Christian. I don't feel like I hold any like, you know, controversial outside the box views. I mean, I think we've talked a little bit about like my views on language and stuff. You know, my wife and I and our, you know, we raised our kids in the church, and I've been volunteering with our youth group at our church in one shape or form or the other since Squad split up. And, you know, we're regular churchgoers, and that's not just because it's a cultural thing for us. It's a thing for us that our faith is a part of our life and our church family is a part of our life. Kind of where we're at. John?
I mean, I definitely would say that my views have changed over the years, but, you know, I've never like wavered from, you know, my belief in Jesus Christ as the Son of God. But I also don't try to force those beliefs on anyone. But I feel like the way that just my personality and how I treat others, that it comes out through that there's something different. But I in no way, shape, or form ever felt like I was called to any kind of ministry or anything like that. But I mean, it's pretty much like if I did not have like the belief that I have, like I don't know how I would go through life. So it's just something that's concrete in me, you know. Maybe it's foolish, maybe it, you know, whatever it is, but I mean, there's nothing that it's really has ever really shaken it to make me question what I've believed all these years. So, I mean, I do identify as a Christian, and I always have, and well, not always have, but you know, for more than half my life I have. So, but I think faith is a very fluid thing, you know, like you go from like a teetotaler or a fund a Nazi or some kind, you know, until like you learn to accept that we are all created equal, but we are all like unique beings, and just to understand where people are in their lives. So like a big thing is just to listen to people, understand where they are. Don't try to force anything on them, but just let them see, like through an example, like in your life, like, hey, you know, why can you be so positive when this is happening? You know, that kind of thing. Just share with them that way. So, I mean, that's where I am. I don't think there's even like any time that I've even like have truly doubted it. You know, it's just something that's just, I don't know, it's there. I mean, and I know friends that, you know, have, and I mean, they're still my friends. I love them. Like, I think it's cool that people believe different things, you know, as much as they don't judge me for what I believe, I don't judge them for what they believe. And that's just how it rolls, you know?
The current lineup of Squad, I'm curious how that came about. For instance, you know, how did you decide which drummer to go with out of all the drummers you've had? Justin's back.
I don't know. You know, like John said, when, you know, Five Iron first called us, which is really, you know, what sort of sparked this current lineup. You know, he thought to call Adam. You know, of course he called me, and I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to. And then it's like, you know, I'm gonna ask Adam. I'm like, oh, we should definitely ask Adam. And that's when I said, well, we should definitely ask Chris. And so he got a hold of Adam. I got a hold of Chris. And then when it came drummer time, I think we just sort of thought of like, I don't know, like Dave is awesome, but it also, I think, like John said, it like was apparent we were going to want to be, you know, if we were playing with Five Iron, we were going to want to play, you know, songs that were more of the self-titled era / some bomb stuff / some old school ska punk stuff. And I mean, like Dave is an awesome guy, like I said, but Dave is also just a very strong personality. And for one, I didn't really know if he'd be all that interested in doing it. And for two, like, I just know Justin would like love to, like, Justin would almost maybe pay us to do it, you know, like, not that extreme, but like Justin he likes playing with us, like, and we like playing with him. And so, I think it was, like John was pointing to me, it was really more just like, well, I would like to ask Justin to play drums because I know that he would just like be so willing to do it. It was just like make his day. And whereas like I felt like if we had asked Dave, it would just be more like, yeah, I'll do it sort of thing, like I didn't know how excited. And maybe like I shouldn't say that because maybe Dave would have been super excited. But yeah, I guess it just came down to that. It's like, sort of just want to, ask Justin because I think that his enthusiasm would be contagious and it would just be like a better vibe all around. And like, I really don't want it to sound like, like I love Dave and I loved being in the band with Dave for all those years. And like I said, it's probably like the most gifted songwriter I've ever known, prolific at least. Maybe Lewis is up there with him, but for sure, people I've been in bands with, Dave is probably the most prolific, or definitely the most prolific songwriter and talented musician I've known. Right. But I just thought like vibe wise, it would be a better vibe with Justin.
Okay, so there were a lot of fan questions, and so we're going to do a lightning round to finish things off. Number one, are there any plans for Squad albums to be reissued on vinyl?
Not that I know of. Chris would like to make it happen, but we have to like talk to people who own the licenses for those albums, and just we never have. But maybe someday. Chris would really like for it to happen.
All right. Tons of bands are reuniting to play at Furnace Fest this year. I don't know if you've heard about that. Will Squad 5-0 be there?
We were not asked.
No. I don't think we fit either, though.
Jeff, what's it been like teaching high school during COVID?
Interesting. Confusing, but also rewarding. I don't know. It's just like anything in life. You adjust to what the cards you're dealt, and you play those cards, and you adjust. It's like I told my students, we're just going to adjust because we've had 4 or 5 different sort of total virtual, sort of hybrid, back to virtual. Then the bell schedule changed. It's been kind of crazy year for us, but I haven't hated it as much as I thought I would, and a large part of that has to really do with the kids I get to teach. I tell them all the time, like, you guys make this way less terrible than it would be otherwise. But yeah, I've adjusted. It's sort of like sadly become like not normal, but at least I have a routine. There's a routine to it, even though it's abnormal.
All right, next up, during the Bombs era, you used the Cobra logo on merchandise. So were you G.I. Joe fans growing up?
Yes.
Yeah, knowing's half the battle, bro. Yeah, every day after school, John and I would sit down and watch G.I. Joe, man. That's awesome. It's important.
What is Squad's best album, and why is it late news breaking?
Self-titled.
Fake news. Fake news.
Fake news breaking.
Okay.
Self-titled's the best album. Fake news breaking. So
here we go. What was up with your hair?
Hey, man. It was glorious.
Which era?
Exactly.
John and I wanted big, frizzy, dirty hair. And I think we accomplished that.
We did.
We wanted to be glam. I can't express this enough. People thought we were trying to be like Poison or something. We were not as pretty as Poison and all that. We were trying to be like gutter. We always called it gutter glam. Like we wanted to be glam, but like dirty. And I think we achieved that for the most part.
Absolutely. Has Chris Klein found the fountain of youth?
I think so. I mean, he still looks like, he looks like 20 years old. It's like insane.
Why aren't you in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame yet?
Bias.
Stomped. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, we sold we must have sold combined 60,000 albums.
Okay, and then finally, what's it like to have youth tattooed on your stomach when you are in your 40s?
It's interesting. I honestly never even think about it until, it's like summertime and we might be at the beach or something or at the neighborhood pool. And I'll look down and be like, oh yeah, my stomach says youth. And I'm like bald and with gray starting to appear in my beard and wearing glasses. I don't know. It's youth is a state of mind, kids. Right? How about you quit? First of all, how about you stop judging? There you go. First of all. Second of all, youth is a state of mind. And I still have the plan one day. This has always been my plan. That once I get
I love this plan.
I get old and older. I am old, but once I get older and maybe rounder, I'm going to just add an E to the end of youth and then put man underneath it, and it's going to say you the man. Boom. Problem solved. Problem solved. Thank you. Thank you.
You got to make sure to use the same font.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been an honor for me. Thanks for sharing and answering all the questions. I'm really excited to hear the new EP. Do you think we'll get a sneak peek at any of the songs before a release date?
Yeah, I like the idea.
Is it really?
Yeah, I think
I'm like so against like sneak peeks. No sneak
peek. Like one little face on. Like
no
a
sneak peeks. Lewis released 3 songs before we put out the new Gasoline Heart record. He gave away half the record.
We're not going to
half the record.
There'll be like parts of songs or something, or maybe one song. But I think Chris and Jamie's vision, they're the record label people. Yeah, like you mentioned earlier, like the booklet or zine or whatever you want to call it, like all that's supposed to come out together. Like the album and the EP and the zine and all that stuff is supposed to be like, one big push. Like it all belongs together. But yeah, I think Chris and Jamie do have an idea for like doing different social media sort of like blast and things like that, where there's parts of songs, and like even like social media ads and different things like that. So I don't know, they've got a lot of vision. Like they have some really interesting ideas on how to, of course we're gonna press vinyl on this one and also release it like as a CD, but like only 100 CDs. And those 100 CDs each have a CD liner that is part of a larger piece of art. So it's like basically a big piece of art that they've cut up into 100 CD squares. And each one will be unique to that CD and it'll be numbered. So it's like, it makes it like more than just, you're just buying the CD. It's be like, no, you're buying the CD, but you're also buying part of a bigger piece of art, which is a bigger piece of what Squad 5 is doing. So I don't know, they have a lot of interesting ideas with their CD.
Before we sign off, any final words that you guys would like to say?
Yeah. Thanks to whoever's listening to this. Thanks for being a fan of the band.
Yeah.
Thanks for being a fan of the music, and like it's been cool. For me, it's been a cool experience. Like I look back on Squad 5 with a lot of nostalgia and a lot of affection. Like there were bad times, there was drama at times, but more than anything, I look back on those days as like just really important days of shaping of who I am, and making friends all over America. And so if that's any of you that are listening, any fans or friends out there that might be listening, thank you for your fandom and your friendship, because without you guys, we would have just been 5 dudes standing on a stage in front of an empty room. And it really is. I always say when Squad was at its best, it was more about the fans than it was about the band. It was more about the crowd than it was about the stage. And I really do feel that way, because that really was where the connection was at. But yeah, thanks a lot, man. Thank you, Adam, for spending 4 hours with us.
I mean, I'm just thankful that anyone would care to still listen to us and care about what we're doing. So it's kind of cool, we're all older now and
families and, you know, grown-ups for the most part. Some of us 5 years from 50, less than 5 years from 50 almost. But, you know, it's just, you know, we made our little, what do you want to say, niche in time where people cared and liked our music. And it's kind of cool, you know. I never expected that, writing songs with mattresses up against windows, trying to keep the neighbors from calling the cops on us while we were band practicing. So it's, you know, it's really cool.
All right. Well, everybody, go follow Squad 50 on Instagram and be on the lookout for the new release. Jeff and John, thanks again so much.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Adam. All right. Appreciate it.